Assalamu alaikum viewers. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Parvez Kareem, your host for this session. With Pak SciComm, we are trying to connect globally recognized professionals with you so that you can benefit from their professional experience. So I'm excited today. I have Professor Tim Thompson with us, and he is a globally renowned professor in the field of presentation skills and writing. So he is a mentor, and he also worked in KAIST and interacted with several international students. So today we will try to ask some questions that were asked by you so that we can get some suggestions that how we should deal when we are writing something, we are presenting something, or when trying to get some scholarship. So all these topics I'm trying to cover in this session. So Professor, thank you very much for joining us. I will start with the first basic questions like you have a lot of work on presentation skills and the polishing the presentation skills of young students and young researchers. So why do you think that presentation skills are that much important for a young researcher?
It's important for young researchers. It's important for experienced researchers. It's really important for everyone. Anytime you are researching and producing new information, you want to be able to share that information with others. So without solid presentation skills, your research findings may not be as convincing, and certainly would not be something that others would feel comfortable sharing with other people. So whether you're writing or you're presenting at a conference or someplace like that, or even making a video about it with an interview, you need to be convincing with your presentation skills so people will believe your findings.
I see, I see. Thank you, Professor. It's very detailed response, even though usually we think it is not that much important. So actually next I want to ask you that you have written many blogs and you have even written a book on presentation skills. So you have told that these skills are important for any professional.
Sure.
I want to ask like why you felt that even you need to write a book on this topic.
The book idea was mainly something that was about sharing my training style and my training beliefs with other teachers and trainers and educators.
I see.
So while I think could be useful for students as well, or people who are interested in improving their skills, the main purpose of the book was to help sort of train trainers and make sure that people who have to teach presentation skills for the first time had some idea of what to do, not just following a textbook blindly, but have some ideas of their own to go in and help the students develop their skills.
I see. That's quite interesting. So now I want to ask some questions about job interviews because we have received a lot of questions about interviews. So specifically, I want to ask about one special situation. Let's say we have tricky question asked by the interviewers, so that is important for the hiring authorities. But the trouble is that for that aspect, the candidate is weak. So he or she is not quite sure that how to tackle those kind of questions. So your general suggestions for job interviews and also for this specific scenario, how they should handle.
Right. Yeah. So obviously you want to generally keep in mind that there are a small number of positions that they're usually hiring for. So they're going to interview maybe 10 people to hire maybe 3 people or 2 people, and sometimes 1 person. So it's a situation where the interviewer has to sort of kick people out, right? You have to say, okay, not you and not you and not you. Right. Sometimes they say, yes, I want you, but mainly the whole thing is to get the idea of who not to hire. When you volunteer negative information about yourself, you're basically saying, not me, right? And so you want to try to keep it as positive as possible about yourself. And I know for some people, Asian people especially, it can be very difficult to say only nice things about yourself. You want to try to balance it and say, yes, I'm very strong at this. but I'm also kind of weak at this.
Mhm.
And so it could be difficult. And so Western people, we're used to just strong, me, I'm great, I'm the best, I'm wonderful, and we don't feel bad about it because we know it's a competition. We know that there are going to be other people who are not selected. We want to be the one who is selected. Now, when it comes to that specific situation of you're a bit weaker or you don't have a lot of experience in some area and you have to explain that,
Mhm.
what I try to coach my students about is to have some idea of that you are working to improve that area and you want to have something quantitative, something measurable, something real proof. So let's say that you you have your first language, you have Urdu maybe, for example, and then you have English, but you need a third language. You need German or you need Korean or something like that. So if you say, I want to learn Korean, candidate one, candidate two says, I signed up for a Korean language course.
Mhm.
Candidate three says, I'm not very good, but I've been taking a Korean language course for the past 3 months.
Right.
Who is going to impress you the most?
Yeah, third one, obviously.
So even though the third one doesn't have good language, third language skills at that time, the fact that they are aware of this and they've already taken concrete steps to improve this, to me, would be something impressive in an interview, even though technically it's not that great yet.
Mhm. I see. That's very helpful, I'm sure, for our viewers. So connecting with the previous answer, I also want to ask to when someone appear for a job interview or some presentation, so he or she should memorize the script or not. So what is your suggestion in this regard?
If it is a speech, if it is a speech where you have written out every word in advance and you're working on saying those words, and maybe those words have been printed somewhere else so people are following along, then in that sense, probably you definitely want to have what you're saying not totally memorized, but as much as possible.
Mhm.
For a presentation or a job interview, it's impossible to memorize an hour's lecture, for example. It's impossible to memorize every answer to every potential question. So as much as possible, you want to have some guesses of what the most common questions will be and have the basis of your answer prepared,
Mhm.
but not word for word, because when you memorize plus stress, what
Mm.
happens is you trying to remember everything you were going to say and you make that face, and that's not a good face for a place where you're supposed to be confident, prepared. Again, you want to show that you are the type of person that's going to fit into this company
Mm.
or university
Right.
or lab or research center or whatever you're interviewing for. So again, you talk about the C's of a job interview: confident, capable, right? Concise, not talking too much, but also comfortable. Comfortable is one of the C's that you also need to be able to show that you're just a regular person. You're the kind of person they would like to have lunch with in the company cafeteria.
Right.
And so when people get too nervous, and I use this word, when they care too much,
Mm.
they hurt themselves.
Right.
They hurt themselves in the job interview by getting too excited, too nervous, and they don't perform at the right capacity. I read an article recently that said 85% is the capacity you should try to operate at.
I
When
see.
people try to operate at 100% capacity, they can't concentrate. They're doing too much. So 85%, Usain Bolt, the sprinter, for example, said he tries to run at 85% so he can still keep some awareness and focus about what he's doing. So I like the idea of going into a job interview or a presentation and care 85%. Try that.
I see. I see. Thank you. It's very interesting indeed. So now I will go to some other questions that are related to CV or resume. So some people are asking about the style of CV. So we see that in Asia and Europe, the style is a bit different. So when
Yeah.
professor look into those CVs, let's say to select candidates for master or for PhD, Does the style has any impact on mind of professors?
Not necessarily, but I think obviously you need to, we say do your homework,
Mhm.
which means if you're applying to a lab in Korea, they may expect to see a photograph of you, for example. They may expect to see that. They may
Right.
expect to see your birthday on there. They may expect to see, more personal information, where on a Western CV, that can get you disqualified immediately.
Right.
to put to put things like your specific personal information, your height, your weight, your age, your gender, your photograph. That would disqualify you. We're not allowed to do that. So again, I would say do your homework and know what is expected from you, and then apply accordingly. Certainly, I don't want to see something that it looks like you sent it to 7 other places. I want it to be tailored to my needs as the hiring individuals. So I don't want to see something that looks very generic and looks like something. And God forbid, I have seen many times someone is applying to Harvard and they leave MIT from their last application in there, and it says Harvard, 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 MIT. Oops, right? So again, you want to make sure that you double check, triple check, quadruple check everything, and make sure that it looks like you are sending it just to me.
Mhm. So it means that we should prepare different CV if we are applying for different professors that let's say working in different fields, slightly
I think
different.
certainly you should adapt and adopt and change a little bit. I know I have a CV that I apply for things as an editor, and I have a CV that I apply for things as a teacher trainer. And
Mhm.
so my CVs will be highlighting different things. There's going to be general information that's the same on both, but I'm going to highlight my experience as an editor and more writing type things on my editor CV. So yes, it would be different.
That's very important advice. So, Professor, as you are also CEO and founder of Archer Training, so what do you think being an entrepreneur? How much important it is in this age of global, like digital age, maybe?
Well, I mean, I see at KAIST, for example, I see that there is a startup center.
Mhm. Yes.
There is the Office of University and Industry Cooperation.
Mhm. Right.
So more and more, the professors are expected not only to sort of live in academia land, but also to try to, uh, you know, put together some startups, help their students start startups. And when they are unable to do that, they're sort of becoming dinosaurs. You need to have the flexibility to get in what we're doing today. So for me, I mean, I have the best boss in the world, right?
Mhm.
And when you work for yourself and when you run a company, and there are different challenges from having a boss and working with someone else's expectations. But these days, and with the COVID, with this year, being able to work online, being able to pivot from a lot of training activities to more online editing activities has really been an interesting experience for me to see how I needed to change to deal with the challenging circumstances that happened in 2020.
Mhm. So, Professor, as you said that the post-COVID era, it looks different from our previous experience. So, what skills do you think are important? You told about the online skills or digital editing and those kind of skills. But what other skills generally you want to see in the young students who are starting their career?
More than ever, the students need to be prepared to know how to ask for help, where to find help.
Mhm.
It's not, if we're not all in the classroom anymore, or I don't have the same office hours that I used to have,
Uh,
you can't just pop in and ask a question. Sometimes you need to be a bit more independent with looking for information for yourself.
Right.
So certainly doing good web searches, um, finding appropriate websites, having a professional network of people that you can ask for help,
Mhm.
and being able to do that politely online,
Mhm.
via email or message or whatever, is going to be even more important, because we don't have that face-to-face opportunity as much, and we expect a lot more communication to happen online. So I would like for the students, first of all, again, I love it when students say, I tried to find it,
Mhm.
but I couldn't, I need your help. Not just, hey, can you do this for me? Can you find it for me? I'm much more impressed by a student that said, I looked here, I looked here, I looked here, I couldn't find it. Okay, I'm much happier helping that student who's at least put some effort into it first.
Okay, so that was kind of good quality of students you have mentioned. So if I ask in other way, like you have developed curriculums for KAIST, you taught a lot of courses regarding writing and presentation skills. So while developing those courses, what do you like thought like the main lacking skills in students? So the most mistakes that were oftenly made by those students when you were developing those courses. So what was your idea for those courses?
If I had to narrow it down to two things, I think the first one would be kind of what we talked about, asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
That it would be they were a little poor about knowing when and how to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they would wait a little bit too long, which sort of ties into my second thing, which is time management. Time management. Freshmen in university are notoriously bad at time management. They want to play, thinking I'll do my homework when I'm done playing instead of doing their homework, and then they can relax and play.
Yeah.
And even some graduate students still have not figured out how to do that well, but usually they're quite a bit better by that point. So I would say, learning to manage your time is very important, like assuming this might take an hour. So I'm going to give myself an hour and a half to meet my friends later. I'll be like, okay, I'll meet you in an hour and a half. I need to work on this for an hour.
Right.
I tell my daughter the same thing, do your work and then you can play.
Mm-hmm.
Do your work, then you can play. And it's really hard to convince them that that's the best way to do it, but it really is. And then, like I said, to know how, when, where, to ask for help, to get help, to ask the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
To not say, can you do this for me, or can you fix this?
Right.
But can you show me where this could be better? Can you show me how to improve this?
Understood. Yes.
Is a better question in my opinion.
I see. So you have talked about asking help. So one other question that I want to ask about professional networking. So it is not maybe exactly asking for help, but asking for collaboration. So how important do you think that professional networking is?
It's everything.
Mm-hmm.
It is everything. There's no way I could have started my company without a good professional network. There's no way I could have transitioned in this year to more editing work without a really strong professional network.
Mm-hmm.
I don't advertise.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I advertised in the past, most of the people who contacted me would say, "What's the price?
Mm-hmm.
Can I get a low price? What's the lowest price?"
Right.
And so all those people, they didn't know me. They didn't know, I didn't have anyone's endorsement or, referral. So now I work only with people who know people in my network. So if it's not a friend of a friend or a coworker of a coworker or someone who's recommended me, who's an old client, I would rather not work with them because they don't value what I do. But as soon as a client says, you need to work with Tim because he has done this for me, the issue of price becomes secondary to the issue of value. How much value do I have? And so the same thing, a student needs to think about their own value, and they need to think about what skills do I have, what experience do I have, but most importantly, they need to think of every class, every lab as an audition to that professor to recommend them for an opportunity in the future, right? The kid who sits in the back and never asks any questions and doesn't say much, it's much harder to recommend them for a position. But the student who comes to my office hours and is curious and cares and wants to know more and wants to develop, I'm happy to write that letter for them. So you need to think about every class as an opportunity to audition and make that professor who can be a part of your professional network in the future someone who can recommend you and put their stamp on you. That's very important.
I see. So I feel, Professor, our viewers may be interested in your success story. So if you briefly introduce your success story, so maybe it will be motivating factor for our viewers. So if you can please.
Well, who is successful? That's a hard thing again, to quantify. What is success? In my case, I think freedom, freedom to control my own schedule is part of success. Being able to turn down potential clients is success. Feeling like my clients would recommend me to new clients is success. But that again goes back to networking, it goes back to experience, it goes back to having a track record. And obviously in Korea, for example, working at KAIST opens up a lot of doors. Having been a KAIST professor is sort of an instant, oh, you can trust this guy. Now, if I go to Turkey or I go to Serbia or I go to Pakistan, I don't know how many people are going to say, oh, wow, KAIST, like they would say for Harvard or Oxford or, a school like that. But here in Korea, that was a big thing. But for me, it's more important to be able to work with people, like I said, that are friends of my clients. So I work with a journal that's based in Moscow, and that came from a client who was a Russian professor at Yonsei University, who I worked with and helped her. And then her friend said, I need another editor, and she recommended me. So that to me is success, is that there are people out there who will say, yes, that's who you want to work with. This is the person you want to work with. And so for the younger students and researchers, I would ask them, who's going to do that for you?
Right.
And why would they do that? What have you shown them? Like, I have friends who I like to hang out with and have a meal and go on a picnic, but I would not recommend them for a job.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, there are really nice people, but then I hear the way they talk about their work or they talk about their job, and I think, I can't recommend them, right? I like them, but I just couldn't do it. So, the younger people need to think, how are you showing yourself? How are you portraying yourself? Are you the kind of person that people say, wow, they are passionate, trustworthy, capable, all those things? You need to be building the reputation for yourself so that people will help to open doors for you as well in the future.
That's interesting. So it means your friendship is not necessarily going to help you, but your qualities definitely that will be helpful in your future and your
it depends. Like my book was published with my friend's publishing company. It was my friend who was starting something new, and he was looking for a project and I was looking for a place to put it, and it worked out very well. But I mean, if he didn't think that the book was going to be any good, then he probably wouldn't have accepted it. And if I didn't believe in his new venture to do that, I wouldn't have put it with him. So again, friendship is great, but also professional friendship is also great. So, you have to think about it that way as well.
Right. Thank you. So as you talked about, Professor, about the startup. So nowadays, the pitch presentation is a very important factor if you are going to get some funding for your startup. So just for my viewers who do not know about pitch presentation, it is usually a 5 to 6 minute presentation. In startup world, usually if you need to get some kind of funding or to enter in some competition, so you have to present your work in 5 to 6 minutes, but it should be very concise, and it should convince the judges that your startup is going to be successful. So Professor, I want to ask you that what do you suggest how to make these kind of presentations effective? Because I know you have polished a lot of startups, so you have a lot of experience.
When I work with the teams or the new companies that are trying to pitch their thing, again, like a job interview, like a presentation, like anything else, the first minute is critical and the last minute is critical, right? You've got to start strong and finish strong. What happens in the middle is usually a lot of data, but the concept, explaining the concept and explaining sort of the target, who's going to benefit from this, that needs to be really, really strong. It needs to be well thought out, but well thought out is not as important if it's not well communicated, right?
Right.
You've got to also think from the perspective of the judge slash investor,
Right.
right? You can say everything from your point of view, but if the judge or the investor doesn't get it, right?
Right.
If they don't see, why would I put my money into this? Why would I, when I go into the judge's room and fight for this team to win? What was it about their idea? And I've been to a couple of those pitch presentations and been on the judging panel, and it's funny to see what different people value
I see.
when they get into the judge's room.
I see.
Not everyone values the same thing, so that makes it a bit more challenging to prepare, because you don't know what these judges or that judge or the head judge or whatever is going to value the most. But obviously, preparation is going to be very important. You need to have thought about all the things that they might ask you during the Q&A time. And again, you could give a dynamite, fantastic, wonderful, awesome 6-minute pitch, and then they ask you one question in Q&A, and you go, "Oh, I didn't think about that." You're done, right?
I see.
So obviously the preparation includes going into Q&A, having all your backup material, all your extra stuff, so that you can answer questions during Q&A, even if you didn't have time to do it in your main pitch. But like I said, having that first, let's call it the first 30 seconds, really sculpted, right? Really, maybe that's what you want to have sort of memorized, so you can really deliver that first 30 seconds as you're fighting your nervousness, as you're trying to overcome, looking at these judges. But then also you need to really tie it up nicely at the end. It doesn't need to sort of be going off into space like, oh, I think that's all I want to say. No. You need to have it really tied up and well prepared at the end as well. So, first impression, last impression. Like if you're a singer at a concert, your first and last songs need to be some really memorable ones to get the crowd into it, and then to finish it up strong as well. So you want to think about it like that.
I see. So just for the first 30 seconds, as you said, those are very important. So those should be more quantitative, or those should be more like addressing real problem. So what kind of hook usually presenters should use?
Yeah, the let's show you what a problem we have identified is, so that we're going to then explain why we're going to solve it, is a typical hook. I think it's effective.
I see.
As long as, and you always want to demo this pitch in front of a lot of different people and have them poke holes in it and say, you say that there isn't this, but did you know about this, and this? Because it's really embarrassing to walk into a pitch presentation and say, don't you hate it when there's no way to fix a flat tire quickly? And the judge goes, well, actually, my company does that. And then you go, oh, how embarrassing, right? So ignorance, I didn't know. That's really not a good idea. That shows you didn't do your market research very effectively. So showing that you've done your market research, I think, is very critical in that sense.
Okay, thank you, Professor. So now I have a question, because we have a lot of viewers from Pakistan. So I want to ask a specific question about my audience. So you have experience of polishing the presentation and writing skills of many Pakistani students. So I want to ask, how do you rate the writing and presentation skills of those students, and what are the most critical mistakes they usually make?
I honestly, I probably worked with only a handful of Pakistani students while I was at KAIST. I mean, I can think of 5, 6, 7, that are still my Facebook friends, and we keep in touch. Some really, really nice people that I have good memories of working with.
Thank you. So
unfortunately, what that means is I don't have a lot of criticism to give feedback on. The people that I worked with were really good, the best of the best. So, but every group of people coming from a certain first language are generally going to have some first language influence that might affect their output in the second language.
Right.
Or there might be some cultural things that impact the way that they are, like the way they were taught to write.
Right.
If they were taught to write very like Korean style, for example, is sort of, so wait, hold on, not quite yet, just a minute, boom, at the end. Oh, here's what I'm doing. And Western, we hate that. We want, what are you doing? Let me give you some information about it at the end. But it needs to start with, here's what I'm doing. So like, I want the information. Here's an example. I had a Korean student, and he was talking about this sensor for toxic gas, right? And the original version of the sensor, it took 10 seconds to detect the gas, which is way too long, obviously. But he got it down to 0.01 seconds. I was like, good. But he waited 10 minutes into his presentation to say that. He said, you know, toxic gas sensing is a big issue. We need to sense it early. It's very important. Here's the way we do it. And then at the end, he said, oh, and by the way, it used to take 10 seconds and now it takes 0.01. And I was like, wait, what? No, you start with, let me tell you about this amazing thing that we've developed where we, you know, it took 10 seconds. Now it takes 0.1. Let me tell you how we did it. Now they're going, yeah, how did you do it? That's amazing. That's what we're used to. So I don't know which way Pakistani students would lean, if they would lean more towards boom, let me explain it, or hint, 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 surprise at the end. I don't know which way is going to be more your guys' style, but I know that if I'm the person who's watching the presentation, I want the first one. Now, writing can be very circular, but academic scientific writing is very formulaic. It's a very structured type of writing, and what I recommend to the students is identify your intended journal or magazine or whatever it is first before you start writing. You can have an outline of the information you want to put, that's fine, but when you write, look at the articles that have already been published in that journal and look at their style guide, and it may be 20-page PDF, but these are the directions. Right. And writing is all about following directions. There are rules for grammar. There are rules for the mechanics, which are the capitalization and the punctuation and the things like that, the structuring of how things are written, right? Is it underlined? Is it bold? Is it indented? All those things I want to see when I'm a journal editor. I want to see a manuscript that looks like my kind of article.
I see.
So when you submit it, your chances of success of being selected for that journal go up immensely if your manuscript already looks like the kind of article that they publish. So if most of the abstracts are 250 words and yours is 450, it's easy for them to say, yeah, no thanks, that's not what we're looking for.
I see.
If their method section is a half a page and yours is a page and a half, it doesn't match, right? So you want it to match. You want to customize the article. And so that's why you don't write an article and then say, where should I put it, right? Because then it's too hard. So you want to have a plan and say, I want to write towards this type of publication. And if they reject it, then you might have to make some changes. You might have to change your, referencing from Chicago style to, to something else, MLA or something like that. And so, yeah, that's going to happen sometimes, but you don't want to do it in MLA and then choose this journal and go, oh no, they want it in Chicago, right? So it's better to write toward a style, knowing what the expectations are for a certain journal.
I see. Thank you. So as the professor said that you are also editor of several journals. So usually I read some blog posts, they recommend that if the page limit for some journal or some conference, let's say in IEEE conferences, those are published in proceedings. Yeah. So there is some page limit. So usually people recommend that if page limit is 6, so it must be 6 pages, your paper. And if the page limit for some journal is 8 pages, so if you write 7 pages, as you said that the number of words in abstract is important. So does the number of pages is also important when you check the manuscripts?
Not in my experience. I mean, obviously you would not want to go over, right? Because they're giving you the maximum. They're saying don't go over 8. And if you go over 8 and say, but I love everything in my paper, I'm sorry, it's just, no, that's not going to work. That's an easy trash can for me. If I have to kick somebody out, you're basically saying, kick me out, kick me out. You don't want to do that. But if I'm selecting and I say maximum 8 and someone writes 6 and it's really good, I wouldn't reject it for that.
I see.
You know, I think they said what Einstein's was notoriously short, but you know, I mean, it was Einstein. So again, if you write something that's interesting and useful and, you know, concise, I'm not going to punish you for being concise. So I would say no. I don't think that would be a problem to go under the page limit. I do think it would be a big problem to go over the page limit, because they have told you follow these directions, do not go over the page limit, and you say, but I wanted to anyway. No, you don't have the power in that case. They have the power.
Right. And just one related question. So for writing paper, usually like I use the LaTeX, so some people use Word. So
Yeah.
when we see those PDFs generated from LaTeX and Word, so we can see obvious difference between those two. So is this like what tools you have used for writing a paper, does it also affect?
No, I don't think so much which one, but again, you know, check those submission guidelines, and if they say we want it in, you know, docx, or we want it in a PDF, or we want it in an editable PDF, or we want it in, you know, whatever form they want it in, that's what you need to submit. You don't submit something that they say we want this and you say, yeah, but I want to give you this. Remember who has the power there, and it's not you. So this is a simple thing of following directions. If you've done it in LaTeX, I don't think that's a problem.
Okay.
You know, obviously if the journal's okay with that, but we want, like, as a proofreader, we want to work in it in our preferred program, so we usually put that request in there.
I see. So, Professor, I have a question asked by some students who are hunting for scholarships. So they're asking, like, what do you suggest for them who are looking for scholarships in KAIST or in USA? So what kind of skills they should have, and what kind of documents they should pay more attention to?
Well, again, the skills, it probably depends on the program that you're applying for. You know, EE and design and biochem are probably going to have different, you know, expectations of what the student has done.
Right.
But again, I think for this, my advice would be to, as early as possible, identify where you're going to be applying, right? And sort of look into what their application process entails, look for what sort of documents that they're requiring, and, you know, start as early as possible. When you start 3 days before you apply,
Right,
everything is too rushed and you're not going to have a complete application. So, you know, maybe a year before sometimes, even if you're not ready to apply yet, certainly familiarizing yourself with the application process
right,
is going to really help you slow down, take your time, space things out, identify maybe your weak areas in your application where you wish you had, you know, a third language, where you had 6 months of studying that third language under your belt, or you wish you had asked a friend to help you learn some new software or something like that. So anytime, you know, time is your friend here if you start early enough. Time can be your enemy if you're under the deadline and feeling stressed and pressured. Because again, like I said, it's a competition, right?
yes.
We choose 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 or 2 out of 5, which means a lot of people will say, no, thank you, sorry. And generally, I would imagine that a lot of the weaker applications come from people that maybe we weren't their first choice, that they applied somewhere else and then sort of dumped the same documents on us, but it wasn't customized for what we were looking for, or it felt rushed, something like that as well.
I see. So another important thing is email to professors, like potential advisor. So what do you suggest, like the subject of email and the content that we write in email, like a cover letter? So what should be included and length of that email?
Oh, I see so many mistakes in emails. And I do a lot of editing of people's correspondence for different companies or government organizations. And yeah, I see the same mistakes all the time. So let's start with the subject line, right? The subject line should never be hello.
Yeah.
It should never be dear professor.
Yes.
It should never be my name is,
Mhm.
right? Because that information is already in the email. We know who you are because it says your name on your email. And let's first go back to your email address, right? If your email address is I love pink 52,
Mhm.
it's hard to take your application for graduate school seriously when I love pink 52 comes up, you know? It needs to be a bit more professional.
Mhm.
Or if it was, #1 biochem, okay, that's a little, that's a little bit too much also. So a nice professional email address first, and then a subject line that says, Tuesday's homework,
Mhm.
or it says regarding the application or application for blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's what I want in the subject. I want to know, what are you emailing me about?
Mhm.
What do you want?
Right.
Right? Short, couple words. Then, again, like I said, writing is very formulaic. Capital letters, dear Professor Thompson,
Mhm.
comma, or put a colon. I'd be very impressed. Wow, very official and formal. How nice of you. Then if you want to say, who are you in relation to me? I'm in your Monday, Wednesday, 9 o'clock class. Oh, okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. I can find you. Here's my situation, right? I don't want, the weather is getting colder these days. Please take care of your health. That's not necessary, right? Time is money. I don't need all the extra stuff. Get to the point,
Mhm.
politely, but get to the point. Who are you? What do you need? How can I get it to you?
Yes.
Sign off.
Mm.
Sincerely, comma, your name. I don't need a bunch of extra stuff. An email should not be blah, blah, blah. It should be like, boom, what do you need?
Okay. So
Please.
specifically when someone is applying for some lab, so
Yep.
what we recommend he or she should study some papers of professor, like
Yeah.
how he or she should prepare for writing in email to professor for potential advisor.
Sure. Well, again, the writing that email, that introductory email, and uh, working on your CV, changing it to match, and there's the key word, match
Right.
that lab, that company, that position, whatever else. Your job when you're writing those letters or when you're going into a job interview is to match yourself
Mhm.
to what that company is and what that company needs.
Mhm.
And that requires you, again, doing your homework and knowing what they want. I'll tell you a funny story about KAIST, right? When I applied to KAIST,
Mhm.
one of my old friends was already working at KAIST, and he knew the people who were doing the interview.
I see.
So he said, they're going to ask you if you like teaching writing.
Uh-huh.
And at that time, I did not like teaching writing. So I was going to be like, no, not really. I want to teach presentation skills. He said, no, you say, I love the challenge of teaching writing.
I see.
And so, no joke, I went to the interview at KAIST. The second question was, how do you feel about teaching writing? And I said, I'm very excited about, and I could see all their faces go, oh, okay. If I had said, oh no, I would much rather teach speaking or presentation skills or business English, they would have said, I don't know, right? So again, no, again, professional networking comes into that story.
Right.
Preparation and doing my homework came into that story.
Right.
Matching myself to what they wanted. Now, by working at KAIST and teaching writing classes, that only helped my career to have experience as a writing instructor, obviously. So everybody was the winner there. I got more experience. They got someone who said, yes, I will teach writing. And I had to buy dinner for my friend for all that top secret information. So, but it was worth it.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much for your time. So I want to request you that if you have any message for young scholars, researchers, and even you said the professionals that are not even young. So your advice for those to summarize all this talk.
Now, you've got to believe in yourself, right? You need to believe that you're the person who should be selected for an opportunity. You should be the person who deserves to be in the front of the room giving the presentation. You need to believe that you have something to offer, and that requires doing the work, in advance. It requires preparing for your presentation. It requires, putting all the information together and then organizing it. It requires some practice maybe on your part, and it requires some talking to yourself and saying, okay, you need to do this. You can do this. A lot of people get very nervous and it affects their performance. So let's go back to the 85%, which we talked about before. I think that's really good advice, and I hope that people will take that and over time sort of come back and say, you know what, that really was good advice. I've applied it myself, and I watched other people and discussed it with my friends, and I've noticed that, yes, that is some pretty solid advice I should consider.
Thank you very much, Professor. And for viewers, we will share the website link of Professor Thompson, so you can go to Professor website and you can read a lot of useful resources there. So please do visit that website. And once again, thank you very much, Professor Thompson. And viewers, thank you very much for joining us. And for next session, we will be having a new guest and we will be taking your questions. So please ask questions in the comment sections. We will include those questions in our upcoming interviews. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.